Hello! So if you don't follow Battlefield on Twitter and Reddit, then you probably don't know this story. I've titled it Developer versus YouTuber as part of an example as to what is wrong with this story. Because although that is technically accurate, what it makes you think is that it's a large company versus a single person, when what this story is actually about is one developer from Visceral called Zach Mumbach versus Matimio, and they're both critiquing each other's work. A better title would be Creator versus Critic, because in the end they're both critiquing each other's work. So the story starts with Matimio being invited to go and play the new Hardline DLC early. He gets flown out, records footage for about 5 or 6 hours, gets fed and watered, and then gets to release footage before anybody else. And he's also sponsored by the EA Ronku program, so he gets more money from EA for every 1,000 views he gets. So this is EA paying YouTubers to advertise Battlefield Hardline. Matimio creates his video, uploads it to YouTube, and then Twitter announces that it's there. At that point, Zach Mumbach goes and watches it, and he's not that happy. And to be honest, there's then a very short dialogue on Twitter, but it's getting an awful lot of attention, and it doesn't really deserve it. So Zach responds to Matimio's video by saying, "Jesus, come on now." Obviously not happy that Matimio is kinda trashing their DLC. Matimio replies by saying, "Having a hard time recommending it for PC. Consoles is a different story." And Zach responds by saying, "I watched the video, I know your thoughts. The headline and the pic though, guess you gotta get your views." So Zach is actually criticising the title and the thumbnail for the video and accusing Matimio of basically clickbaiting, putting up a provocative title and thumbnail to get more views. If we take a look at Matimio's video, it's not really a review of the DLC, it's more commentary on what he played at the event. So it's not all that detailed. He goes into the new guns, the fact that most of them are only available for the Enforcer class, and the DLC is aimed at the Enforcer class. He looks at the new maps, and he looks at the new mode. Then he goes on to criticise the DLC because it's going to split the player base. And up until that point, I agreed with Matimio about the DLC. I've played bits of it on the Hardline CTE. But you can't criticise a DLC for splitting the player base. All DLCs do that, whether they're good, bad or indifferent. It doesn't matter, a DLC will naturally split the player base into the haves and the have-nots. And in the video, Matimio does say that he will have to play the DLC more, experience more of the content to see if it's worthwhile, and that he can't recommend the DLC on PC. But he's not as negative on the DLC front when it comes to the consoles, so his comment and review is kind of mixed. He doesn't really come down on one side or the other, just says he can't recommend it. Now, when you look at the actual title of the video, might want to skip Battlefield Hardline DLC. That's probably more negative than the actual video content. And meh Hardline DLC is certainly more negative than the content, because he actually says there's some good things in the DLC. So Zach probably has a point that the titles and the thumbnail are more negative than the video and are probably there to get views. Having said that most of the people that view Matimio's content are probably subscribed to him and don't really need the titles and thumbnails to get them to click on one of his videos. So when it comes down to Matimio's criticism of the DLC and Zach's criticism of Matimio's video and title, it's probably 50-50. They're both wrong, they're both right. Matimio shouldn't really base his review of a DLC on the main game's player base, and Zach shouldn't really accuse Matimio of clickbaiting. Next there's a comment from Scanner Barkley who says from the outside it just looks like Zach is bitter. Zach replies saying, "Oh for sure I'm bitter, lol, I'm providing content to drive views to your channel and you tell people not to buy." And that seems like a pretty fair comment. He's saying he's pissed off that Matimio is essentially telling people not to buy the game he's working on. And then Scanner Barkley poses the question, if he doesn't think the DLC is worth it, what is he supposed to say? And this is where Zach opens up the whole new can of worms. If he doesn't like the game, I would prefer him to turn down the invite to come play. I'd rather bring in Hardline fans. And if you look at it from Zach's point of view, that's a pretty valid argument. EA and Visceral paid for Matimio to go play the game, record the footage, to create videos, and then he trashes the DLC. Now that's a pretty ballsy move on Matimio's part. I don't know if he's brave or if he's stupid, because EA are renowned for holding grudges, and if Matimio wants access to future events, he's got to play ball. This time, he's kicked the ball right over the fence. He's been invited to a pretty exclusive event at EA's expense and gets to release content before a lot of other people, so he's guaranteed to get views, and then he's paid extra by EA for every 1,000 views that he gets. And then he trashes it. And if you look at the other Battlefield YouTubers like X Factor and Jack Frags and Level Cap, they haven't been nearly so negative about the Hardline DLC. So, here's the big question. Do these fancy trips and this extra cash from EA influence your decisions in videos? Of course it does. In the creator versus critic argument, if the creator is paying the critic to produce criticism, how can that criticism be fair and balanced? Now I am being hypocritical here. If I was invited to one of these events, or if I was offered a place on the Ronku programme, even though I'd make virtually no money from it, I would take it straight away, without hesitation, just because of the access it gives you. But if I was making sponsored content, I would make it purely factual. There wouldn't be any comment, there wouldn't be any review. You can't do review comment if you're being paid to do it by the person you're reviewing. But back to the purpose of this video, creator versus critic. Is Matimio's criticism of the DLC justified, and is Zach's criticism of Matimio's video justified? They both got things right, they both got things wrong. Matimio's titles and thumbnail are a lot more negative than the actual content of the video. But I don't think that Zach saying it's deliberate clickbaiting is justified. Where I do think he has a point is saying that if Matimio doesn't like the game, stop accepting the invite and stop taking their money to do videos on it. And let's face it, most of the videos that are coming from these events are pretty much useless. All the information that's in it you could get from just looking online. The only thing it adds is the gameplay footage in the background. But when this kind of story happens, neither side looks good, and the winner is decided on popularity, not the points they're putting across. Thanks for watching.